Tonight, the corridors of justice have seen it all, convictions and acquittals as well of crimes from petty offences to capital offences. Under the Constitution, the courts have authority to uphold and as well as enforce bills of right. Well, 2023 was defined by numerous landmark rulings, as our very own Nancy Nelima now reports.
Life sentence has been an elusive matter in the country. Although under the penal code, capital offences like murder, robbery, violence and defilement are punished by either life or death sentence. With Kenya boasting a progressive constitution across the world, the lack of a precise definition of life imprisonment, however, created a gap. In July 2023, on a defilement appeal case, the Court of Appeal in Malindi declared mandatory life sentence unconstitutional, terming it as unjustifiable discrimination, unfair and unacceptable, contrary to Article 27 of the Constitution, which states that every person is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law.
A judge should be able to analyze the circumstance of each case and then have a determined ruling. From a human rights perspective, my take would be that the court ought to give itself discretion in terms of the matters they receive. A judge should be able to analyze the circumstance of each case and then have a determined ruling. When you are given the life sentence, it should mean a 30-year period. So there are some principles that aid people to arrive at such determinations, is that the essence of punishment must have a goal. It should deter other members of the public from committing the same offense. It should reform the
Nala instant noodles. Taste the tasty.
Punishment, then they're able to return or be reintegrated into the society.
Human rights advocate Elijah Rotok also speaks on the need to dignify human life and the impact of a sentence to a convict.
Persons serving capital offences are isolated, and so there's an aspect of loneliness. They are separated from the other inmates. There's family disintegration in the sense that a significant number that either were fathers or mothers or immediately has an impact in terms of what it implies that this person may never see the outside doors of prison, and therefore the family disintegrates. And also even to the family members themselves, there is victimization. There is that tag that the family carries, that we belong to so and so who was either a murderer, who was a robber. Yes, so eventually that stigmatization also has a negative impact. Even to the offender themselves who are serving sentences, we've noted that it has a health impact in terms of once that sentence is committed to you, psychologically it torments you. And it also has an impact. You start developing diseases that before the conviction you didn't have.
Currently, Chief Justice Martha Koome has proposed Penal Code Amendment Bill 2023 that aims to reduce sentences for individuals facing life imprisonment, particularly those convicted of capital offences, to 30 years.
There is a proposal currently to suggest that it should now mean, when you are given the life sentence, it should mean a 30-year period.
Every person has the right to freedom of association, which includes the right to form, join or participate in the activities of an association of any kind. This is Article 36 of the Kenyan Constitution, which largely informed another landmark ruling. In September 2023, the Supreme Court reaffirmed that the National Gay and Lesbians Human Rights Commission has a right to officially associate, a highly controversial subject in the country that has elicited mixed reactions.
We have been trying to register the National Gay Lesbian Human Rights Commission for the last 1.5 years, since April 2012. And in May this year, the government sent us a very, very distasteful letter saying that they would not register.
The journey dates back to 2013 when Eric Gitari tried to register an association of gays and lesbians at the NGO board, but the application was denied on grounds that the names used were offensive to public policy and LGBTQ was outlawed constitutionally. With the help of a lawyer, he proceeded to court.
Supreme Court was faced with a decision of deciding whether the freedom of association as guaranteed by the Constitution. So we have the freedom of association under Article 36, and we have equality and freedom from discrimination under Article 27. So the argument from the government side was that these two rights are not unlimited. They can be limited in certain ways. And in this way, they are saying they're limited because the association is of an outlawed or a criminal activity. So the same way we use Mungiki and stuff, that's what they were relying on to say that now we can't register an association of gays and lesbianism based on the outlaw by the penal code.
As Advocate Robi Karani notes, arriving at that specific ruling was not obvious.
It's also important to note that the decision of the Supreme Court was not unanimous. 3 supported the registration and 2 opposed it. And the argument was coming up from our Constitution and the freedom of equality, freedom from discrimination. What happens is that we borrowed so much of our Bill of Rights from the South African Constitution back then in 2010. Now, if you look at our Article 27.4 on the requirements for discrimination, it talks about conscience, belief, race, gender, sex, but it doesn't talk about sexual orientation. And it is the one thing that is missing from the South African Constitution. And so the judges that were not agreeing to the majority decision were saying that the framers of the Constitution did that deliberately and intentionally, that sexual orientation was omitted from that right from discrimination because it is not supposed to be there. But now the majority side, that's composed of DCJ Mwilu and Njoki Ndung'u and Smoky Nwanjala, was of the opinion that the freedom of association and the right to assemble should not and cannot be curtailed by legislation, because at the end of the day, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land.
Walking down the aisle is one, if not the happiest moment for couples. With a wedding comes huge commitment, and trouble sets in when, due to a myriad of reasons, by law a marriage is dissolved, and a battle for property ownership kicks in. In January 2023, the Supreme Court ruled against automatic equal division of wealth upon divorce. These presidential rulings stated that upon divorce, each partner should exit their marriage with the wealth each of them acquired individually.
For you to have matrimonial property, so you have to belong to that marriage. Now that marriage has to be declared broken down, or you have to divorce, so that now we can come to what is matrimonial property. So the case was between a man and a woman who married in 1990. They divorced in 2016. Once they got divorced, they went to the High Court for division of matrimonial property. The High Court awarded the wife 30% of the matrimonial home and 20% of the rental apartments and the income. He didn't go further to the other landed properties. Then they went to the Court of Appeal. When they went to the Court of Appeal overturned the High Court decision and said, we will share everything 50-50.
Article 45(3) of the Constitution guarantees equality rights during the dissolution of a marriage. The court, however, held that Article 45(3) does not entitle a former spouse to 50% share of assets for the mere fact of marriage, raising concern about downplaying other forms of contribution in a marriage.
So the argument is still out there, but what was the import and what brought about the argument is that now we have to prove that contribution. It has not been made clear or guideline given that this is counted as contribution and this is not counted as contribution. But now we cannot rely on the fact that now we are divorced and we were married, so it is 50-50 regardless of what was happening.
Kenya being a democracy with an enlightened constitution, 2023 has set pace for many possible landmark rulings in the future. Nancy Nelima, Look Up TV.
Well, and that is it from